Hello and welcome to another episode of Father and Joe. I am Joe Rockey here with Father Boniface. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about something that is, well, prevalent all around us, which is artificial intelligence. We see AI all around us. And I have been given, I've given a number of talks and speeches about this as it applies to a business context around the world. And one of the major problems that I see with artificial intelligence is that it's oftentimes mistaken for what it is and the cause behind it in terms of the economic reasons. The real reason AI is here is not so Siri can look up and tell you who won the 1960 World Series. The money that is behind the AI is between the major corporations trying to use artificial intelligence as a means to essentially replace the fact that they're bad at being bosses. If we're going to boil down my thesis about why AI is here, it is that. And the reason for that is the belief that says this AI will work even if you don't. So even if I'm not good at treating you as a person, I only see you as an object, and you don't show up to work next week, this little AI will still work. And we've been going down this road for a while now. Most people can't remember the first time that they saw a kiosk in a shopping center. Well, that's an example of this. And it all, in my opinion, comes down to the fact that this is not about being a tool which is more productive, which it may or may not be. But this, to me, is employers hedging their bet that they are bad at employers and not treating their employees correctly. So that is the starting point as far as how I view AI from a business standpoint. And I know this is one of the things that you obviously know a lot about, both from the moral side, but you're also have the tech side as well from your college upbringings, and you're one of the most tech savvy priests I've ever seen, at least in your exposure of YouTube. So I think it's a good cross section here, Father, to have this conversation and how AI applies and how we should approach it.
Yeah, well, I think it is a useful conversation and really important in an emergent way, even more so in our time. The Pope Leo XIV indicated early on that one of the reasons he chose the name was because what Leo XIII did in terms of the Industrial Revolution, stepping in with clear teaching from the church to guide the developments and to prevent the destruction, the damage to the human person that was unfolding in the Industrial Revolution. And Pope Leo XIV, really sees the advances now being another kind of revolution, and that would be centered around artificial intelligence, so-called. The kinds of things you were just pointing to, Joe, indicate also the range of that word. We use the word AI, perhaps, I don't know, too broadly or too freely or whatever. There's just a lot of things that could be sort of stuck under that category. I mean, as you said, from the simple things of Siri anticipating your calendar schedule and telling you who won the baseball game, even anticipating that you'd want to know who won the baseball game when you get up in the morning. Those kinds of simple things to, so many, there's lots of automated reasoning that's been happening for a long time. I mean, your car is filled with automated reasoning. Even if you have the lamest car at this point, it's the computer systems that are analyzing and tracking and making decisions on things are pretty amazing. From the most basic application of that to really self-driving cars that well, as you said, it's an accommodation for bad leadership. To take a slight tangent and approach that from another direction, people tell me they are they would never trust an automated car. And I like to say, what percentage of the time is the automated car paying attention? Well, 100%. And how much are you paying attention? Not 100%. Why in
That's
the
the
world do you
argument.
trust yourself or someone else? Like I trust an automated car way more than I trust anybody or myself. It's actually paying attention and is calibrated in a way that is much better than I or anyone I know is doing in terms of driving. So anyway, there are places that and well, you have this in surgery, you have this in different aspects of medicine. So I think the temptation to make these sort of all or nothing claims is one of the dangers, that
Mhm.
we say this is always better or this is always worse or I would never, and actually starting to parse out what is the uniqueness of our humanity, what is irreplaceable, what is how can artificial intelligence be used as a tool to support us, what things will over dependence on it diminish, or could it lead to problems? And I think those are really interesting questions. We're just starting to, we have a committee at our college, at St. Vincent College, that's going to meet on and discuss the use of artificial intelligence in education. The knee-jerk reaction is, oh, it's going to write everybody's papers. We need to find all of the plagiarism checkers, and we need to eliminate the AI. And it's like, well, maybe not. Why are people writing papers to begin with is probably a good question. What are you actually trying to get out of it? Are you just trying to produce right results, or is the process of studying and writing, formulating arguments and expressing yourself formative in the way that we want to form our college students? And then, having written things, can you actually run that through a large language model and see what paper it produces and see how it expressed things differently from you? And can you learn, is there a learning process that can take place there from your expression to its expression? And can you develop new expressions based on that comparison? Can you look up certain things, but then also be able to validate them? Can you have it write things, but then you're able to explain it? Anyway, there's a lot of ways that you can use it as a tool if you're a little bit creative and you understand what the processes are that you're actually trying to produce. So that's just one realm. You mentioned in terms of automation, like in checkout, you know, on the well, it's like, why do we hire people to work at gas stations? Is there actually something valuable for the person themselves? Is one question. Is there something valuable for the consumer to have a person who works at the gas station? Is another question. Um, and then how much of that can be supported or replaced? I mean, I think all of us would be happy if the person who's checking out our items always got it right and didn't charge us the wrong amount or give us the wrong amount of change. Were able to tell us what is there and what the product is that we're buying. I think we all want greater accuracy and greater faithfulness, and I think that's not a bad thing. We also would like to eliminate problems like the grumpy, belligerent person behind the counter. We'd rather have an experience that doesn't have that.
Mhm.
And in that case, like, just replace it with a machine. But is there a positive value that we're then losing out on? Is there actually a value to a friendly human interaction? Do we try to have a relationship that's not just transactional when I want to get stuff from the gas station? And, for me, it's like sometimes yes, sometimes no. I mean, sometimes I'm driving for 7 hours and I want to stop in, I want to buy something, and I want to leave. And maybe I want to stay on the phone because the relationship I'm actually carrying on with somebody in a long conversation is more important than connecting with somebody at the gas station at that moment. In another case, I could say, well, the kind of random encounter that I have at the gas station and a person who's really friendly and an orientation and expectation that I'm not going to just interact transactionally with somebody who's going to take my money and give me a product, but that I'm going to have a human encounter. Well, actually, our culture has moved away from that, and we would need a little bit of cultural transformation to recover that, which I think was more prevalent in even just a few decades ago. But anyway, uh, the
I
way
agree with
that
that.
AI can.
I have a tangent off of AI about why that is, but I agree with you there. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut off your last
No,
point.
no. So I'm just going to sort of summarize and say how we use AI in a way that supports relationships rather than replacing them, I think is the challenge that lies ahead of us. And, again, that's the same challenge in a little different way with the Industrial Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
How can we take advantage of the incredible gift of automation, of interchangeable parts, of whatever, the powerful engines that can drive incredible operations without just making the human persons that operate them, uh, a cog in the wheel that is just getting ground up in the process of producing things. And to sustain humanity and the unique dignity of the human person, to sustain the importance of relationships, and to leverage the tool that is now possible through especially large language models. That was the real massive shift a couple of years ago with GPT, making a number of things possible that were simply not possible immediately before that. But anyway, I think those are the interesting challenges and questions that lie before us that are in danger of being overly simplified and dismissed, or overly simplified and embraced, and then really missing the opportunity.
So, well, first of all, I greatly appreciate the way in which you looked at that, especially the part where you're talking about diving in deeper and actually analyzing the results. You're at a university, so you might be able to force kids to do that, but in terms of the workplace, you really can't. And there very rarely is the deeper thought of, hey, first of all, what's the opening question why we're doing this whole term paper thing in the first place, but then the deeper of analyzing the result from the AI and going from there. Because the common experience is that I need to get more done, and I'm not going to dive deeper into this thought process. Whatever it says, I'm just going to kind of go with. Maybe I'll do a cursory review, but essentially I'm going to rubber stamp that, especially if it's something where you believe it's AI talking to AIs. For instance, in our particular world right here of making this podcast, we have to give a description. It doesn't get read by our over 99% of all Apple users do not read the description of the podcast. But how does it get recommended? The Apple algorithm reads the descriptions and goes, based upon other episodes you read in their descriptions, we think you should watch this. So when it's AIs talking to AIs, I have no problem having the equivalent of ChatGPT producing our descriptions, which, by the way, they have been doing for about a year now. And it might be why we see increased results, but I'm pretty sure it's because of you, the audience. So I'm not saying there's not a place for this at all. What I'm saying is that there is a movement for companies that have said, we can't retain employership or our employees. So rather than trying to fix that core problem of why don't people stay with us, why is our retention wrong, we're going to try to figure out how to get a machine that will always show up to be able to do this. And there is a lot of, the way that I view this is the way that we've always discussed about reducing the person to a means of production. And that, to me, when I stand back and look at the AI, is the greatest problem in which we're seeing here. Is that it's not, it's nothing more than, how can I get you to do more? And if you're not going to show up at all, how can you easily be replaced? And not to go into the second point, which might be outside the realm out of AI, but as a culture, especially in the last 10 years, if not in the last 25, we have really overall stepped away from learning the personal side of our employees. It's something that just doesn't happen. Lots of social and legal landmines out there if we start diving into the personal side of stuff. Some of those things we talk about here, but you just think about all the major headlines over the last 10 years, especially the ones before COVID. They're almost all social issues that it is a lot easier as an employer to punt, to not get to know my employees, not get there, and to have the mindset of I'm paying you, so do what I tell you. But at the end of the day, that is the textbook version of reducing someone to production. And I see AI in many ramifications as an accelerant to that problem. So no, I'm not trying to oversimplify it, because there are times I use it, it's very productive. But there are also many times that if that is your starting point aim, that you're doing it wrong before you even kick this game off. So to think that you're going to have a prosperous long-term company isn't going to work. And then, like I said, we can dive into some of the reasons that it won't work. But that's from a philosophical standpoint why I start with the mindset of using AI to think you're going to cut employee expenses is going to kill your company. That's my starting thesis point when it comes to AI.
Yeah, again, I think you probably need some exploration into more specific cases. I think there are places that automation could be very effective in reducing employee expenses. And so to make that a blanket statement is probably a little bit much, but you gave some clarification around, like, if you're driving your employees away, that there's obviously an issue there. Now, part of the issue could be that the work is not worthy of a human being, and it should be replaced by automation. And that's sort of where I was going with the gas station thing too. It's like, do we need a human being doing some of these things, like standing there and being bored out of their minds, or just like ringing people up, or dealing with the belligerence of people, or whatever, stocking shelves, or and not I'm sort of indicating the reasons that a human being doesn't need to be there in those examples. But again, if we're trying to create an environment in which there are human encounters, and also, like, how many of us got started doing that kind of job? I mean, I worked at Toys R Us, and I worked at Subway, and I learned some maturity. And so there can be a formative process in those environments. And that's kind of goes back to my education example as well. Like, is the end goal of your life writing term papers? No, it's not. But is there something developmental in writing term papers that will positively benefit the end goal of your life? Yes, absolutely. So, then there's that balance.
Quite frankly, you've hit one of my fears for the future of AI, is that very few people want to be the one that breaks someone in. When you look at virtually every resume, what do they want to see? They already want to see you experience having already done this job. Someone taught you how to do it. But even before that, there is a precursor of requirements that you need just to be able to be employable. Stuff like showing up on time, how to interact with your coworkers, how to interact with your employers. And you learn that at your first job. And the more and more the AI steps up and makes the gap from I have never had any experience to this is now what this first level position is, essentially it's like going up a flight of steps where the first step is higher and higher and higher. How at some point it gets to a point where you can't walk on them. That is my societal base long-term fear of it, because the positions that get cut first are what we would consider entry-level positions. And it runs into some of the arguments that you're making right here. At the end of the day, people are going to be more accurate putting things into the app. And oh, by the way, we also learned that when they order at Wendy's and they use the app, they spend more money because they're willing to type in a bigger order than they are to say it out loud. It's a psychological thing they've been able to prove. So we make more money. I don't have to worry about this person doing it wrong, and I don't have to worry about any miscommunication. So there's definitely upsides to it, but the long-term downside, and this is why I think it could be a tragedy of the commons type thing, is it doesn't necessarily hurt my business, but if everyone takes this approach, it could hurt the next generation dramatically. And those types of situations, because there's very few companies that say, I'll take one for the team. There's very few people like the priest out in Los Angeles who's teaching people who are the convicts, essentially, or the most likely to become convicts, how to be employed. There's very few people that are ever willing to do that. And this is my fear, long run, with AI in the employment sphere. But sorry, Father, I took us on a tangent here right as you were ready to bring us home. So sorry about that.
Well, no, and it's a good point to conclude for now. I think let me just note again. I think there are really interesting questions here that are. We could probably do another episode and talk about some principles, but there is a Vatican document called Antiqua et Nova, and that document came out in January of 2025 and really explores, from the ethical perspective, philosophical, theological perspective, what the human person is, what intelligence is, what automation could support or undermine, what are some principles to hold on to as we allow more of this technology to become a part of our lives. So it's very much worth reading for any of our readers who are listeners who are interested.
Beautiful. And we will continue this conversation next week as a little preview for you. And again, even though we use AI to make the actual descriptions for here, the core of what's growing us is your word-to-word mouth. So if you have listened to this episode and you liked it, click that little share button. It's in the top right corner of your phone and send it to someone else who would benefit from it. It greatly helps us, and we thank you for listening here today, and we will be with you again next week.